Me and a coworker were chatting yesterday, and we were both just talking about how there's been like this uptick in sending political messages through some sort of entertainment medium, whether that entertainment medium is video games, movies, music, TV shows. Now with music, it's a little tricky because artists have been getting political, religious, etc. on music forever. Some of the best tracks that I've heard from artists are religious or political, and or dealing with issues in society or human behavior. But me and him both agreed. He's a younger guy, so he's also seeing this uptick in like women in leading roles and a lot of characters being of different races, like uh, in which perfectly syncs with this whole DEI initiative that's been being spearheaded in just about anything you can think of, from music to medicine to education to all sorts of far reaching institutions and stuff. So what I'm saying is, like, there definitely has been like an uptick in women, and I see that in the outer worlds too, right? And women in leading roles. Let me be specific. And it's crazy how as soon as you mention that, like the elephant in the room, and this is what me and him were speaking about, it's like you automatically get labeled as sexist or a racist or homophobe, or you name it. It's those three right there are like the unholy trinity. Those are like the three most like widely used accusations and insults when someone doesn't agree with you, right? Like they don't have as much steam as they used to because they've been overused. But in my case, it's like I'm playing the outer worlds too, right? And this is me looking at it subjectively, right? I'll be honest and I'll tell you what I'll think about it in a second. But this is first it's me explaining it's making an observation, right? Just being 100% subjective, right? There are far more women in this game than men, right? And I feel like that was by design. Sorry, I said subjective and I said I feel. I fucked up already. Let me take that back. There are far more women in this game than men. Now, whether that was done intention or not, right? That was the subjective part. That was pretty short, right? I got to get to the sorry, that was the objective part. And that was pretty short. Now I got to get to the subjective part cuz that's where I shine. If you ask me, I would say that it was deliberately done to send some sort of a message like women are the future, down with the patriarchy. That's the vibe I get. Like it's a political message that's not sorry, that's disguised. I'm not going to say it's well disguised because lots of people have acknowledged that there are far more women in this game than men. Now it's very easy to dismiss this, right? You can just hear what I'm saying now and go, "Shut the fuck up, Danny. So what? So what?" And you know what? At the end of the day, you would be right. Because so what? I'm still playing the game. It's still not the greatest Obsidian game, that's for sure. I still believe part one was more fun and more deeper and entertaining, quite frankly. But part two, as you play it, it does get better. I mean, I had a hard time sticking with it in the first couple of hours, and I know with these open world RPGs, they take a while to shine. It's a slow burn usually, right? Because it's such a massive game. I think I knew that coming in to part one, and yet I still wanted to hang on. I still wanted to see the ending. I still was enjoying it. But with this one, it was just hard, man. They took away a lot of the things that I liked. The whole lone wolf thing, meaning that you can travel. They give you incentives to travel alone. Damage perks and stuff like that. You don't have that here in the outer worlds too. But to go back to what I originally was saying is that, yeah, if you ask me, yeah, I think they're definitely trying to send some sort of a message like woman empowerment and stuff like that, right? Which is not necessarily bad. And of course, if you overdo it along with anything, it becomes a bad thing. But my thing is, my biggest issue and what me and my coworker were talking about was that, like, I'm just addressing it. Then we were also talking about the gaslighters, right? And no matter what political spectrum you're in, you have your gaslighters, right? You have the ones that clearly see the problem, but they're trying to make you seem like you're crazy. Like, there ain't no problem. Or in my case, not really a problem, saying that there's a bunch of women. There are far more women in the Outer Worlds too than men. Which, by the way, if it would have been reversed, that still would have been the elephant in the room. I would have been like, hey, there are far more men in this game than women. What's going on? What kind of galaxy is this? That, what happened to the one gender? Why this is so lopsided? Why are there far more of these types than these types? So to me, it's more of an observation, although I do feel like it is some sort of a message that they're sending, some political message of some sort, or I guess you can count that under political, but it's activism. Maybe that's the better word that I should be using. So we were talking about how like it's become like sexist or racist or homophobic to even point that out. For me, just to say this phrase, hey, there are far more women in the Outer Worlds too than men. That right there is like, it sends people in an uproar, right? And that's not exclusive to just the Outer Worlds too, or video games in general. That's anybody on the internet, right? The internet is it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a shit show. It is a fiery, smelly dumpster a lot of the time. I'm not going to say all of the time, and you know what? That comes with the price of speaking your mind, right? So give me 1 second. And I'm not sure if I had to get off there for a second, just logged in. And I'm not sure if I would want it any other way, right? Because that comes with, there's downsides and upsides to everything. This decisions, whatever you decide to pursue professionally, the person that you pick, right? The hobbies that you do, there's ups and there's downs, and there's ups and there's downs to freedom of speech. And we see a lot of the downs online, right? Because people are at each other's throats more in the political field than anywhere else, in my opinion. I don't think there's another subject out there that makes people want to kill each other more than politics, but I may be wrong. So yeah, like that's my thing, is like me and him were discussing like how we can't even discuss it. And then when you've got, like I said earlier, you have your gaslighters, right? The ones that clearly see that there are far more women in the game than men, and then they go, nope, it's perfectly proportional. I've seen some guy online write something like that. He was like, nope, the ratio is actually the same if you really do the math. I'm like, I'm not doing the math. No one's doing the math. But I can tell you with certainty that I've been playing this game for, I'm going to say, roughly 60 hours now, which is way more than enough for me to give you a good opinion on it. And I will say that so far it's gotten better. Women or not, to me, it's not, like I said earlier, it's not a deal breaker. Like, okay, fine, there's more women. But, it is kind of weird that if they are sending this message, it's like, does activism belong in video games? Like, sure, I guess, but if you're trying to push something, remember, you're going to turn a lot of people off. That goes with anything, right? Like, you can, like religion, right? Lots of people hate religion because it's been pushed on them, right? Like I know so many kids that went to Catholic school and studied theology as like a requirement, obviously, because they're in a Catholic school. And now none of them are nurses. Sorry. None of them are nuns or fathers or pastors or whatever you become once you continue to study religious studies in a Catholic upbringing or whatever. Like none of them are. A lot of them are actually in jail. And a lot of them, they end up being really, really lost. And that's me putting it lightly later on in life. And you wouldn't think that, considering they came from a pretty good upbringing, because first of all, you have to come from a good upbringing to be in a Catholic school in the first place. That means your family must make some sort of a good money to be able to afford to pay extra tuition money, right? They could just send you to public school and save all that money and use it for food and all that shit. But so what I'm saying is, you would think that having the leg up sometimes in life would lead to a life that later on that would be better. Like when you get older, it's like, oh, I had a good foundation. So now that I'm older, because of that good foundation, I'm doing great. And don't get me wrong, I would say most of the time that's the case. But in my experience, a lot of the kids that I know that went to Catholic school, that has not been the case. They're lost, financially lost. They're still living with their parents. They're not doing well in their careers and stuff. But that also could be me. All these kids, they all came from the hood. That's where I was raised in the inner city. A lot of poverty, a lot of crime. So maybe that's it. Maybe if I was in the suburbs and I went to have friends that went to a Catholic school in the suburbs, they would have done better. And like, I don't know, maybe it's a proximity thing. I'm sure those are factors. I don't know, man. My brain is firing in all different directions. All I know is that I shouldn't get crucified, and no one else should get crucified, especially, and this is just concerning to the outer worlds, for saying that there are far more women than men. And I just want to know why, right? If you're someone who doesn't necessarily believe what I believe, which is they're sending a message, that's what I think. You know, if you just feel like that was just a design choice, maybe most of the developers were women, and, that kind of just by extension, because they're women, they make a lot of characters in their likeness, and therefore you created a game where it's mostly women. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I don't think that is. Once again, I can't prove it. I can't prove it. But what pisses me off is just like, let me say that without calling me a sexist or anyone else. I remember I spoke about this on the last video, and the reason I'm speaking about the Outer Worlds 2 again is because, that's the same game that I've been playing. I don't really bounce from game to game. I like to stick to one, finish that, and then move on. I thought I was done with this game. I put it away. I downloaded Avowed, and instantly within an hour I was having fun in Avowed, even though that whole pronouns thing is kind of weird, right? Like they make you choose your pronouns. And that's another thing, right? If I say, hey, that's kind of weird, I wish I can skip that. Automatically, it's like, oh, what are you, some sort of homophobe? You're not an ally. And it's like, no, it's just I choose not to participate in any of that. The same way, you choose not to participate in believing there's two genders, or, like everybody chooses to participate in something. And it's like, dude, let me live. If it's not harming you, if it's not directly affecting you, let me live. And I'm a big live and let live guy, but unfortunately, the internet is not that place. It's not a place of reason. At least those fucking comment sections aren't. So I got hair in my mouth. All right. So yeah, I was instantly having more fun and Avowed within an hour. And then I said, you know what? I always get that feeling inside of me. Like I should have finished the Outer Worlds 2, right? Because it was a decent enough game. Let me finish it before I move on. I hate doing that. Just completely abandoning a game and then just moving on to something new. Like I feel like a drug addict, right? Who's chasing that high. I play a game for a little bit. I absorb the best parts of it and then just throw it out like chewing gum, right? Just to throw it out as soon as the flavor gets gone, and then move on to another one. I don't like that feeling it gives me. So I went back and I started playing it again, and once again, it's not the best Obsidian game. It's not the best Outer Worlds out of the two, but it's getting better. It's getting better. I'm playing on very hard, and it is very hard, in a lot of weird ways, like you're getting one shot, two shotted, and you die, and you're just like, bro, I got crazy great armor. I got crazy great skills that allow me to have even more of a damage resistance, and still I'm getting one or two shotted. It feels unbalanced, terribly unbalanced. And I guess that's the purpose of very hard, right? It's supposed to be unbalanced, right? So can I complain about it, really? I'm just saying that the difficulty in the Outer Worlds one, which was called Supernova difficulty, it was done much better than the difficulty here in the Outer Worlds 2, which is just called very hard. So yeah, my coworker basically didn't gaslight me. He's like, yes, I do see it. I do see that a lot of video game companies are having women as their protagonists, and it's a trend. It's some sort of a trend, and I don't think I was gonna say Bethesda, Obsidian is who I mean, but right at this point they're like one of the same, right? They're under the same banner. They work, shoulder to shoulder, so it's like they're pretty much the same company at this point. So I know that the official reason that, and I've said this before in my last video, the official reason when they pressed some of the devs about the wokeism and the DEI, and I'm putting my fingers up in the air because woke is an incendiary term. You say woke and it's like everyone's ears perk up and some are ready to attack you and some are ready to cheer you on. And I say that because when they pressed one of the dubs or some of the dubs, I know they said that it's not woke, it's just suffering from big business syndrome. And I guess that's their way of saying, I don't know. This is me speculating. Let me be very clear. I think what the way he meant big business is that you've got these guys in suits, right? They're bosses essentially, and they're like, "Hey, nowadays we study the trends." And this is a dude in a suit that knows shit about video games. At least this is the way I like to envision it. And he's coming up to you with some sort of a clipboard and he's going, "We did the studies, right? We had focus groups and all this fancy schnazzy shit. And we noticed that nowadays what's trending are more women. So you got to have a woman as a protagonist. Well, you got to have more people of color. And now, mind you, this has always been a thing. It's just on overdrive now. DEI, political correctness, that's always been a thing, right? Trying to be fair in the workplace, trying to include more people of color. That's always been a thing. It's nothing new. It's just on overdrive. And it has been on overdrive for the last few years. Exasperated, did I say that word? Anyways, made worse by COVID, also the whole George Floyd murder, and that was a murder. Man, it was just a perfect shitstorm of this guilt that came from like the white man, and also just this gigantic reform. Like everyone felt like they had to go back and judge historical figures on past crimes, and now this once touted hero is now a racist, and they're knocking down statues, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, what is going on here? It's something happened. Well, those two things that I just named, those two events, I'm sure that's just the icing on the cake. I'm sure it's a lot more than that I can't even comprehend in my little head. But a lot has changed, and that's what the devs were basically saying. They were like big business syndrome, and that's what I think. I think that these suits, in order for you to release a game under their banner, in this case it would be Microsoft, you got to follow these certain things. It's like, we'll let you have creative freedom, but at the same time, you got to have this, and this. Or maybe it's not that at all. Maybe that the execs are kind of like, look, we're going to let you do your magic and we're just going to get out the way, right? And it just so happens that a lot of devs, are activists. Like his activism is like at an all-time high. So they're going to naturally put that in the product that they're working in. So it could just be a staffing thing, right? Most of the staff, maybe they're young, idealistic kids who are, probably super left-wing, bleeding heart lefties, and or not. This is all in my head, man. I have no proof of this. This is just what I'm thinking, and they're putting that into their work, or maybe being the loud majority at the office, and everyone's kind of just like, look, man, just put it in the game before Martha comes here and yells at me about how women did this and women did that. Sounds crazy, but I don't know. I just came up with this whole fantasy in my head right now that may or may not have happened. But either way, I hope that they balance things out. And when I say they, I mean everyone in the world, not just devs. I hope that things get a little more to the era of, let's focus more on whether a person is a good person, whether they have great characteristics, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of religion. Like, Haji from India is fucking cool as shit because he's a stand-up guy. That's why I hang out with him. I don't hang out with him because he's Indian or because he happens to be gay, or like people put those things in the forefront and they forget that, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't even realize that he's actually an asshole or whatever. So I wish we can get back to that, like just focus less on things like gender, race, and religion, and focus more on just good people, man. Just like you want to have good people in your team. That's it. Good people, good women, good men, regardless. And I know I'm sounding like a fucking, I sound kind of dumb. I know, because it's like, I wish for world peace. You remember when celebrities used to do that? Everyone would just cringe. I feel like I'm being like that. Sorry. But I don't know. I'm just longing for those days. That's all. I don't want to see activism in my video games. I don't want to see activism in my movies unless I specifically am looking for a movie about activism or a documentary or something. But yeah, I just want to play a game that's fun, and I want parts and characters written specifically for a good person, and you kind of just, when I mean good person, I mean like an interesting character in video game. And to specifically talk about the video game world, I mean like create a character that's badass or whatever video game type. Maybe you're making a survival game, maybe you're making a strategy game, whatever. Make a character that's like really fleshed out and dimensional and also realistic too. Like, don't add no 150-pound, women flipping over 300-pound muscle-bound dudes, and vice versa, before you get up in an uproar. And don't add no 150-pound man flipping over 300-pound muscle-bound dudes, or women. All I'm saying is that, like, of course, if it's a fantasy game, do whatever the fuck you want. And yes, it is a video game. You have to. Realism is, what's the word? Like, they're very. You can take liberties. You can take massive liberties with realism, especially when it comes to video games. That's what I'm trying to say. So once again, that's hard. As a matter of fact, speaking of that, my coworker was saying, like, I don't know what do you mean? Because when I told him, I said, it's not believable when you're watching a movie and you're seeing like this 150-pound girl, 130-pound girl flipping over these massive guys. And he's like, oh, well, you obviously haven't seen animes where it's little girls with giant hammers. That's a thing. And, I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, if that's fantasy, and fantasy can do whatever the fuck you want. But I'm talking about, like, if you're making like a movie or a show or a video game that's grounded, like a military type, I'm not saying women can't be badass. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, be like physically in the real world, what are the chances of a 150-pound man flipping a 300-pound muscle bound dude over their shoulders on some judo shit? Like that, this very, very, those chances are very small. Very small. That's why we have weight classes in fighting, for to avoid instances like that where it's just a straight slaughter. So yeah, and then he tells me, like, you're looking into it too much, and maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. All I know is this, right? I shouldn't get crucified for observations, for addressing the elephant in the room, And sure, if you want to crucify me over my opinions, that's fine. Like everything that I said, that's cool. But like, what I mean is, opinions and observations are two different things, right? Because opinions come from a place. This is what I think. I don't know for sure, but this is what I think. That's an opinion, right? An observation is like, no, this isn't what I think. This is what it is. Like, I shouldn't get crucified for observations. You know what I mean? Like, hey, the sky is blue. Yeah, you can be that smart ass guy. Actually, the sky is black, but the cloud reflections and all right, dude. All right, don't be that guy. I'm just saying, like, there's just some things that are undisputable, for the most part, at least, and everyone kind of can agree. I shouldn't get crucified for things like that. When I say, hey, look, this is blah, 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 oh, you're racist and sexist. And it's like, what, dude? Now I am? But if I would have said this a few years ago, everyone would have been like, yeah, weird times. So, yeah, The Outer Worlds 2 went from like a solid 5 out of 10 to like a 6.5. So, like, once again, if it's my psycho brain going, all right, I'm going to finish this, even though it's just above average in terms of entertainment. That right there is more of enough more than enough of a reason for the average person to go, fuck this game. I'm actually going to go play something that I enjoy, which I can't argue with that. But I told you I'm a psycho. And in my head, I'm thinking like, I don't want to just move on to a different game and not finish this one first, even if I'm not enjoying it as much as I should. Is that the way to think? No, that sounds kind of crazy. It's one life, right? You should be spending it doing what you like, but my brain would not allow that. Like I was on the cusp of losing sleep because I didn't finish this game. Isn't it? That's how psychotic I can be sometimes about things like this. But good thing is that it isn't just a personality quirk or maybe just some sort of a mental illness that I have going on or something, which I won't deny both of those, by the way. But it's also the fact that I'm actually kind of enjoying it a little more than usual. So I'm like, okay, well, now that I'm actually fully in, not well, fully that's a strong word there. Now that I am enjoying it, I'm like, okay, maybe I could finish this and actually look back at it and go like, you know what, that got better, that got better. Thankfully, it did. I'm hoping. I'm I know I'm probably around the halfway point or a little over the halfway point, I would say. So I don't have much to go. In the meantime, peace. Stop fucking fighting. That's it. That's all I got for you. Bye.